Hello and welcome to the Remembering Forward podcast. This is episode 1, and I have been meaning to begin this series for quite some time. Now, the primary reason behind my motive of doing so is this is an extremely interesting time to be alive, right? As a human on Earth. And I realize while being so caught up in the news, all the negativity that's going on that everyone seems to be very focused on, a lot of it stems from not really understanding who we are as humans. And I've been looking into this stuff for like 2 to 3 years now, super fascinated by it. And a lot of it's going to be esoteric, a lot of it's going to be metaphysical, a lot of it's going to be spiritual, consciousness based, and it's going to be very interesting to delve into because I have been wanting to share my insights for quite some time. Now, in the interest of humanity and all the negativity and conflict that we see that seems and appears to be increasing, but it's actually our awareness of it that's increasing, so it seems like more is happening, more negativity is happening, but it's in fact the opposite. And as they say, it's always darkest before the dawn. And I don't know how much darker it's going to get or going to seem to get, but by the end of it, it is going to be a very beautiful outcome. Now, I've already put a disclaimer on the topics I'll be discussing and how many people might find it, hard to believe and whatnot. Everything that I state in this show that I seem to be saying as if it's 100% fact, if it's true for you, just take it. If it's not, you can discard it. Nothing I'm saying you have to believe. I'm just articulating what I believe to be true. And right off the bat, since I've said that now, humans are, how can I best put this? We don't really understand what and who we are, and that is cause for a lot of the conflict in the world. What I mean by that is, for example, over 97% of our history is lost. That's crazy. We don't even know what happened to us in the past. And a lot of it's been distorted. The 3% that we do know has been shuffled around. We don't know what's 100% verified true and all the rest. But I won't honey it up. I'll just say straight up what's really going on. Humanity is a very interesting specimen on this planet because unlike the rest of the wildlife and fauna and flora, what have you, did grow naturally upon the earth. Human beings, however, are a little special, a little different in that case, where our ancestors, the hominids that roamed the earth for millions of years prior to Homo sapien, did evolve naturally on the earth. Us, however, there was a little bit of an intervention, as you could say. Anyone who's familiar with the Sumerians, who know of the Anunnaki, and all those mythologies, are going to know where I'm going with this. I believe that human beings, as many people are being more curious to learn about now, are in fact hybridized beings, meaning we didn't evolve naturally on the earth as descendants from our ancestors, but rather there was, from off-world, a genetic intervention, a hybridization program, if you will, to create a new species, which we are the product of. Of course, I'm referring to the Sumerian mythology of the Anunnaki deities that they believed were gods, but were in fact more advanced beings that came from off-world. And there's a lot to it. I'm going to get into the whole story of it because it is a whole story. And enough time has passed that we've just forgotten that's where we came from, right? With all the floods, the Younger Dryas, and all that. Now, to understand it from the beginning, Homo sapiens, I believe, as the fossil record has it stated, have been on the earth for about 300 to 500,000 years, and that was around the time that these off-world visitors, these Anunnaki beings, or the Anu, as they were called in the Sumerian language, visited Earth to harvest minerals. They needed specifically things like gold that they could use to atomize and disperse into their world, atmosphere, and because they needed to rebalance out their world. And so they came to this world in search of minerals initially, but soon found it to be a daunting task. Now, one of them suggested, because they were starting to get really aggravated, really antsy, like we need to get all this gold in this amount of time, like they had an allotted amount of time that they had to meet this quota by, And one of them suggested, the name or known as Enki, why don't we use the natural hominid of the earth that grew naturally, that evolved over millions of years naturally, and put our genetics, our DNA into them, make more evolved hybrid beings that are still subservient to us, and just have them do all the labor, have them help us out. Everybody was on board with that. As unethical as it was for the rest of their society that they didn't even know what was going on the planet of Earth, everybody was on board because, okay, we could just create these creatures and then have them do all the work for us. Thus, that's where the line of Adama, Eva, the initial first lines of humans were created 300 to 500,000 years ago when all of this was taking place. Adam and Eve were not an individual male and female that were placed on the earth 6,000 years ago. That's the watered down, distorted version of what actually happened. Now, of course, the rest of the Anunnaki society wasn't aware of this happening, and as soon as it was found out, they were said, okay, pack it up, you guys are coming out, because you can't just create sentient life, have it do your bidding, and then dip. Well, that's what they needed to do anyway. They couldn't stick around because for several thousands of years after the hybridization was done and humans were already here, they did allow themselves to be worshipped as gods because we didn't know any better. We just thought, wow, great, mad, like huge being, and he has all this technology that seems like magic. And he created us. He's God. He's our God. But that's not that's not actually how that works. The reason why this is going to be so ontologically shocking when it gets revealed more and more, because I mean this year is already crazy enough. We have the file drop nearly a month ago now that kind of just told everybody, oh, by the way, your government that you thought was for you has actually been infiltrated by a 6,000-year-old death cult. So that's how 2026 has started off. And then just recently, I think last week, the President of the United States made an announcement that all UFO files, all extraterrestrial files will be released. So more is coming. We're going to really need to hold each other's hands when a lot of these revelations are made, because a lot of these truths, if you will, that have always been the case are really going to shuffle up the society, like the structure of our society, basically. Because the next point, all religion on this planet, specifically the Abrahamic religions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, are the product of these interactions with the Anunnaki beings that took place many, many, many thousands of years ago, 200, 300,000 years ago, when we were first incepted, like when we first came into being on this earth, as a outcome, as a product of the hybridization program that they conducted, of putting their DNA into our hominid ancestors, and as a result, Homo sapien. That's what we are. We're half hominid. So basically, we're aliens. That's how you can interpret it. Even though our generation and the 150 to 200 generations prior to us were born on this planet, our DNA does come from off-world. And the Anunnaki themselves were a mix of all sorts of things themselves. Now, if you're hearing this for the first time, I know it probably sounds insane. It's literally paradigm shattering. But the more I've looked into it, the more different perspectives I've seen, because I grew up religious, and as I got older to a certain age, a lot of it stopped making sense to me. Like a lot of the things in the beginning never made sense to me, like, you know, going to hell for premarital sex or something. But as I got older, it's like, oh yeah, like, you know, the Adam and Eve story, like 6,000 years ago, like but humans are older than that. Like, we've been here much, much longer than that, because we have science. We have instruments that can tell us how old specific fossils are that are of our species, and we've been here for a very long time, hundreds of thousands of years. So that kind of just itself destroys the biblical narrative of humans being here for 6,000 years, because first of all, 8 billion people can't come from 2 humans. That's genetically not possible. There's not enough genetic variety in their material. Secondly, I mean, this is just kind of like a kicker, but why are we getting punished for the decision of 2 people? Make that make sense. Anyway, just to make it clear, I am not anti-religion in any way, shape, or form. My perspective is just that religion, it's simply training wheels to understanding consciousness. That's really all it is. when humanity comes to a point where it understands its inner divinity, its inherent perpetual connection to the divine, no matter what, then we simply won't need the mediums of scripture, religion, buildings, and churches, mosques, or whatever else that we believe that we needed to reach the divine, because it's always within us regardless. It's really just our beliefs that kind of block, that can create the experience of blocking that reception to the divine, but it's always there regardless. It's just that we have the power to kind of cut it off by believing we need a Bible or a priest or a sheikh or a like Talmud or Tanakh, Quran, whatever. But you don't need any of that. It's always, that connection's always there because we are children of God. An interesting fact that not many people are aware of, from what I understand, is that the Old Testament used to be polytheistic. It used to actually be. It didn't like it. Over time, it came to like one singular God, but the remnants are still there. Like for example, that one verse in Genesis where it says, "Come, let us make mankind in our image." Who's these people? Like who's we and our and like let us? Like who are these people? Right? I thought God was just one singular being, right? And the Old Testament, as crazy of a series of books that I'm gonna get into that later, but as the Old eventually led to the New Testament, right? Like Jesus came down to set things straight, and the New Testament was created off of that. And then later after that, Muslims that believe that God sent their last prophet, that sent his last prophet, because God is a male, right? God sent his last prophet, or God sent the last prophet Muhammad to download the Quran in a cave. Like think about how crazy that sounds. So an illiterate man walks into a cave and 2 days later walks out being able to recite an entire book. To me, that sounds like he got a download from an angel, an angelic being, an extra dimensional being. Like a, you know what I'm saying? Like that's what it sounds like. It could be from the source of all that is or God, but what I'm saying is that divine story, that prophetic story, is incredible. But it all leads back to initially the Old Testament. And I mean, you could argue whether or not Christianity and Islam would exist without the Old Testament, or Judaism. I don't really know, but my point is that it kind of like all branches off from that original point, and that original point happened to have been polytheistic because it was originally the Anunnaki that were masquerading as gods, right? Have it like if you read verses in the Old Testament, it's crazy. Like they'll send people, they send people over to neighboring villages and say, "I am the Lord your God. Kill every woman, man, ox, cattle, donkey, infant, and suckling babe, and bring the spoils back to me." Dog, we can't be falling for this. Okay, I I know in God. I don't just believe in God. I know there is some divine nature to this universe. You can see the patterns of the galaxy, and then that mimics the patterns of swirls of a hurricane. That mimics, like everything is following like a mathematical code, right? I'm looking outside the branches of the trees. It like you know that this is a divine creation, but there's no divine God you're getting me to believe that's gonna tell followers to go to a a neighboring village, pillage it, and bring back the spot. That sounds like a person. That sounds like an Anunnaki being that eventually got too, I don't want to say complacent, because while initially the relationship started as us just being helpers to help them mine the gold, because to them we were just self-replicating technology, right? Like we could mine, have children, those children mine, those children, like self-multiplying miners, right? That's how the initial reason for our conception even was. Obviously, that's not all we're capable of, and that's not all we are now, right? Even at that time, right? That the past doesn't define us in that way. However, having that understanding that the basis for religion on the planet came from interactions with more advanced beings that kind of took advantage, in a sense. Like, it would be the same as if a group of scientists went out to an island to go study it or go harvest something, and on that island they were stuck and they needed, extra assistance and they, didn't know what to do. Then one of them said, "Let's take the local chimpanzee, put human DNA in that chimpanzee, and make chimpanzee human hybrids that can, raise their consciousness so they can understand us. Then they'll just carry our load." As it says in scripture, or as it said in stone tablets such as the myth of Adapa, Atrahasis, Like the Sumerians literally tell you that the gods created humans to bear their load, so they wouldn't have to toil, right? So if, imagine human scientists went out and did that to chimpanzees to make human chimpanzee hybrids. Obviously, if the world found out, they'd say, "Get the fuck out of there," right? Leave those beings that you created to themselves. But before they got out, they were also kind of, allowing them to worship them, creating hybrid human beings, right? Because that's what demigods were, like Gilgamesh, which is the oldest story in recorded history, who was said to be three-quarters god, one-quarter human. But if a human is already half Anunnaki, like half god, if you want to say that, half god, half hominid, earth hominid, then an Anunnaki being breeding with a human would make the offspring three-quarters Anunnaki, one-quarter hominid. So that's why they were called demigods, because beings like Gilgamesh, were much bigger and more akin to the Anunnaki, but still had a lot of human Earth hominid genetics. So obviously, it would be fair to say that there's a lot of unethical aspects of it, the nature of where we came from. But I think it's good to not be too hung up over that because of where we are now and how far we've come and what we're capable of doing now and what's in our path. And realizing and just understanding and really just trying to understand from a new point of view how this all came to be, and it's going to be hard for a lot of people that were born into religious families that their religion is their entire identity, but that was a misnomer to begin with. Identifying with your body was never like the right way to go about, like the correct way to go about things from the get-go, even though we do it, right? Like we identify like this is I am my first name, I am my body, I am the religion I grew up with. But you could have just as easily been born on some remote island in the Pacifics, just harvesting coconuts, and then if you got to a certain age and then someone came to you and asked, "Who are you?" You wouldn't have any answer. Like, I am the conscious being of this human. Like, that's right there. It wouldn't be self-contained identity or ego. But yeah, I hope I have given you a lot to think about. This is only my first episode, so I'm still ironing out my cadence and style of how to speak and whatnot. And I am going to get better at it. It's just that I finally needed to start this. There's a lot to talk about. Like I could talk about this for free. I mean, I've been doing it every day anyway, right? Like on a daily basis, I'll deadass have 2 to 3 episodes playing in my mind. Like in the shower and while driving, like I'll have a monologue just going like of me just doing exactly this. So I'm finally at a place. I'm grateful that I'm finally able to articulate and put myself out there to just see whoever resonates with what I'm saying. I'm not expecting anyone in any way to agree with anything I'm saying at all, but I know that there are people that share my point of view. Billy Carson, right? Graham Hancock, like all these people that a lot of people they'll hate on, but I think a lot of the things that they say are valid, right? Like the pyramids are not 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years old. They're clearly like, bro. I think even a recent, I saw like like just a week ago, I saw a recent hypothesis that had a scientist proclaiming, no, no, wait, this is actually 12,000 years old. It's I don't know how, like it's probably between like 20, 30,000 years old. The Great Pyramid of Giza is very, very old. The Egyptians didn't build it, right? It was already there and they moved into it and then repurposed it. It was there for a very long time, used for different purposes, and even the methods in which it was constructed involved all sorts of techniques that we don't really know anything about. Like we're not familiar with it. The fact that you can use sound to make things levitate if you resonate it to the right frequency and all that. We don't have a concrete understanding of that just yet because our path of technology went in a different path. Like we have a lot of technology, but there's also other branches of technology that we could have went that are parallel to us, but we chose a specific path. So the more that we're able to expand our awareness and our consciousness, we can understand those different other branches that are still capable, like with crystals, with energy, frequency, sound, vibration, all that sort of metaphysical area of study, and stop ridiculing it. Stop being so cynical. Stop like when Donald Trump made that announcement that he was going to release extraterrestrial files and UFO files and all that, like he was redirecting the secretary or the Department of War and the head of the Department of War to release, any information on that. My entire timeline on X or Twitter was, yeah, the UFOs are demons. Oh, it's bullshit. He's not gonna release anything. Like, meanwhile, people are not realizing the drip feed of disclosure. Like, everything is moving slowly, but it has to move at the pace that it's moving, because if it was too quickly and too much got revealed, it would be too ontologically shocking and not constructive to anybody, because it would be too destructive, right? You want to balance out telling the people the truth, of course, but it has to be the truth, like in a pace that we're able to handle collectively. Very much appreciate you. Thank you for listening. Hope you have a wonderful day. Much love. Take care.